Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. This is the big webinar where we'll be announcing our 2020 research agenda. My name is Steve Rowan. I'm a partner at RSR. In a moment, I'll be joined by my other partners, Brian Kilcourse and Paula Rosenblum. If you've joined us today, you probably have some interest in what's happening in the retail space in the next 12 months. This has become an annual tradition for us where we identify the things that we think are going to be most interesting to study in the coming following year. We share them with you, we get your feedback, and as always, we welcome your ideas and suggestions for things that we either are not drilling down deep enough into, or if there are topics that we're not grabbing and you think there are things that we should be talking about. This is meant to be, obviously it's a webinar, so it's kind of one way, but it's meant to be interactive after the fact. So if you have any questions, you'll see here in a moment, we have ways for you to get them to us. Firstly, this is GoToWebinar. It's not a perfect tool. We had a little trouble getting in today ourselves, but if you can hear my voice, then it's working just fine. If you want to use your phone line, there is an audio pane that should give you a unique dial-in number and access code. And within that same pane, there is also the ability, as I said, to ask us questions. Ask anything you want. Don't be shy. Just send them in to us at any point. If we have time at the end of this, which we probably will, we tried to set this up to be a rather speedy presentation. We will get to your questions. If for any reason there's something that we're either not comfortable talking about in front of the whole class, or we run out of time, we promise we'll get back to you. So send us anything you want, and we will get to you one way or another. And then lastly, one of the most common questions we always get is, will these slides be available? Will the actual recording be available? Both will be available by the end of the week. So if you've registered, we've already got your email address. We will just send you an email that lets you know when both of those are available, and it should be fairly soon. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Paula, and she's going to talk fairly briefly around what it is that we see as a reason for us to be changing our methodology for the coming year. So Paula, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. If you're in the Northeast, enjoy the beautiful fall. If you're in the South, enjoy the waning days of summer. We have been running our benchmarks, as you guys know, since we've been in business, 2007. And what we initially saw was that there was a gap in the market looking for pragmatic business case reasons why technology matters. And we created a methodology, and we run about 11 benchmarks a year, give or take, where we talk to retailers. There are other people, other companies, who do a lot of consumer research, and they take a look at what consumers think. And so we happen to start finding another hole, and actually it's a thing we really rather enjoy, which is to compare consumer attitudes with retailer attitudes to see if retailers are hitting the mark relative to customer expectations. So let's take a look at some notes, Steve. As I said, we've been gathering this benchmark data for 12.5 years. We did see a gap in the market, a need for pragmatic, close-in, honest, business-oriented data. We're very proud of the fact that we know how to separate the wheat from the chaff, and a lot of times we get respondents from retailers that don't pass what I'll call the sniff test. And we would never publish data like that when it's obvious that retailers didn't quite understand the question. Very important to understand that. Again, mostly we've surveyed the retail ecosystem where there have been a few exceptions. We did a home delivery report that was a 360-degree view. We did some private studies on payment processes during holiday seasons, and that was fascinating because the perceptual differences were stunning. Again, there's others who do a very good job of surveying consumers to understand their attitudes. So we did find this gap in the market, and that is that we know retailers, yeah, we can be consumers too, along with retailers, but in some ways as retailers, we're flying blind. And focus groups just aren't the same as data-driven research. So many of our studies next year will compare consumer attitudes to retailer attitudes to see how they match up. Now, one study at the end of this year is actually going to compare retailer attitudes with factory attitudes as we start to take a look at near sourcing. And I think Brian might talk to you about that later. Any of the sort of 360-degree reports that we have in here are going to be identified by this cute little blue icon that you see on the right of the screen. And our goal is very straightforward. We want to cut through clickbait and noise to get to the root of issues. And our goal is to help retailers gain more clarity and, of course, to give the people what they want, the people being the customers. Okay. For the remainder of 2019, we are about to publish, Steve and I have written a report on IoT. Is it finally finding a home in retail? And that's one of those benchmarks that's important for me to call out, because I read a benchmark that was written on an aspect of IoT by somebody else, and they published data that I knew couldn't be accurate. And we just wouldn't do that. We have no axe to grind. We're not looking for consulting dollars from you. We're very, very clear about what we believe is real and what is not. In December, we're going to take a look at the real role of robotics and automation in retail. So that's the end of our 2019 agenda, and I'm going to pass it back, and we'll start talking about 2020.
Well, this is my chance to say hi. This is Brian Kilquist. Thank you, Paula, for that, and thanks, Steve, for getting us started today. This is actually a study that we're very, very excited about. The title will be Flexibility from Design and Sourcing to Customer Delivery, and we're actually launching the survey this year with a plan to release the report in January. Now, let's be clear on what we're doing here. Since our inception in 2007, RSR has really conducted, I think, about 11 benchmarks on the retail supply chain. These studies have been generalized looks at either the supplier side of the supply chain or the customer side. So, for example, we've been focusing on the effects of assortment localization, last mile customer order fulfillment, and things like that. This year, we want to do something new and exciting. We're focusing on fashion and specialty to examine the challenges and opportunities that retailers and their manufacturing partners are addressing, especially in light of some rising global uncertainties and the need for more agile response to shifts in consumer demand. So, Steve, if you go to the next slide. This study is something we're undertaking in partnership with the AAPN, and that's America's Apparel Producers Network. So this is very exciting to us. We'll take a 360-degree look. We're going to get perspectives from both retailers and their manufacturing partners. We want to examine some of the factors that might be pushing retailers to consider sourcing closer to the customer marketplace being served, whether it's lower or more predictable costs, a more agile response to shifts in demand, a desire for greater control, and perhaps because of concerns about supply chain shocks. We want to understand all of these things and how aware retailers are of them and what they're doing as it relates to the supply chain. We also want to understand how manufacturers feel about these very same issues. So we're going to uncover the perceptions of U.S. brand managers and retailers, and then we want to compare those to the attitudes and capabilities of the manufacturers, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. We're also interested in getting a better understanding of if and how retailers and manufacturers are deploying some new technologies to help them to improve visibility across the entire supply chain, or as we say it, from supply to revenue. So this is a real exciting topic. It's focused on one particular vertical in the industry. We think it has a lot of relevance in today's world, especially given what's going on in the global arena. And so look for this benchmark to kick off next month. We'd encourage you to take a look at the survey. And if you want to know more about how you might sponsor it, just get in touch with Linda. So over to you, Steve.
Yeah, we're actually going to head to Paula for another one of our new 360-style surveys. So, Paula, why don't you walk through some of the thought behind why we're looking at the online customer experience?
Sure. In a lot of our store studies, retailers have consistently told us that they have a goal to make the store experience feel more like the web. But it really begs the question, are retailers actually delivering the experience on the web that customers are asking for? How well does it work? And I have some relatively strong opinions about this, but I'm really curious to see what customers think. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover here. Is it all we think it is? Again, there's these endless conversations about making the store more like the web. What do retailers think? Do they think that their online experience is that good? What do customers think? And what's most important? Everybody talks about personalization, but there's a lot of concern about privacy. So one question we want to ask is it personalized enough? Is it too personal? We saw a very interesting application yesterday because we don't really we don't really call out one vendor over another. I'm not going to mention their name, but they create an ability to curate an assortment online relatively easily without getting personal at all, which is kind of neat, without getting personal or curated. So we need to understand, are our websites curated enough? Are they too curated? Are they personalized enough, or are they too personal to get to the point of creepy? The next question we want to examine, particularly in the context of online and the customer experience, is price and promotion. How important are they to retailers, and how important are they to consumers? Next is the role of influencers. I just talked about that on a podcast this morning. Influencers have in some ways replaced the merchant prince as the arbiter of taste, or so it seems. We want to get a sense from consumers across a bunch of age brackets and demographics to see what their opinion of influencers are, and find out from retailers how they court those influencers as well. And just as a note, we really fully expect to find a lot of major disconnects in this study between retailers and shoppers. I think that there are a lot of misunderstandings, and I'm really, really, really curious to find out what that looks like. Go on. And next, I believe we go back to Steve for the next one.
Yeah, and we've got another entirely new methodology and also another entirely new topic for us. Buying online, returning in store, and buying online, picking up in store, which we have kind of, cutely named the profitability twins. When you think about this from a 360 perspective, when we're asking both shoppers and retailers to weigh in on the value here, the thing to keep in mind is that a few years ago, both of these behaviors probably would have been seen as somewhat not great, right? Buying online and picking up in store has become insanely popular in just a few short years. I don't think any of us could have predicted that. And the people that go online and buy 10 of something, keep the one they like, and return the rest in store, used to be considered your worst customers, and now it's pretty much everyone who's shopping. A lot of people hacking the system this way. But again, as we look at the way that Amazon kind of eats everyone's lunch online, if you do have stores, the good news is that both of these trends actually get consumers into stores. So we're viewing this as a window of opportunity really for profitability. And if you want to do them well, there's going to be a lot that you have to conquer from a retailer's point of view, because both are fraught with a lot of logistical challenges. So the first thing that we're going to do that we've never done before is we're going to survey retailers in depth around what it is they think are the ways to most profitably employ buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return in store. And invariably what we'll find out, as we always find out with all of our studies, is that the best retailers, those who we call retail winners, don't just do the same things. They tend to do entirely different things. So we're going to tease out what are the things that they're doing differently, and most importantly, we're going to look at the technologies that are involved. Not only what are they using right now, but where they're investing for the next 12 to 18 months that they think in particular are going to help them achieve these things more profitably. But at the same time, we're going to ask shoppers to find out what it is that they think matters most when they are hacking the system this way, right? When they are buying online, picking up in store, or when they're buying a whole bunch of things online and returning most of them in store. How well are retailers meeting their needs? Which ones are doing a good job? Which ones aren't? Where are areas for improvement? And what are things that are just downright broken? So again, this is an all-around first for us. We're really excited about it. And the one thing that we can accurately predict in advance is that the resulting report is going to compare those two worlds. Paula just talked about, we expect to expose a lot of he said, she said breaks. The thing that we hope to be able to do out of that is call out the next best actions that retailers can be taking right now in order to leverage maximum profit during this closing window of opportunity, as those retailers who do have stores really have a tremendous opportunity in front of them. So Boris and Bopus, the profitability twins, a first for us, and one that we're really eager to do. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Paula.
Thanks. And here's another 360-degree report, and that is about merchandising and sustainability. And the big question we're asking is, can agility and sustainability work together? When we did this 360-degree home delivery study a few years ago, we found that for retailers, when we rated issues, environmental issues and ecological issues were way at the bottom of their list. As it turned out, for the shoppers, they were way at the top of the list. They cared about traffic in their neighborhood. They cared about pollution in their neighborhood. They cared about noise in their neighborhood, there was definitely a big issue and a total disconnect. And I don't think any retailer, well, I know for a fact because so few highlighted it, retailers really understood it. So there's been a lot of discussion lately about fast fashion. The good news is it's a very agile way to work. The bad news is it creates a stunning amount of waste. There's talk about that, but if we go to the next slide, and by the way, this survey will launch in January. The report will release in April. We've learned over the last little while that fast fashion has a very big environmental footprint. Luxury retailers like Kering and Gucci have pledged carbon neutrality, I believe, by 2030, because they recognize that as we have a demographic shift of boomers and shifting sort of out of the luxury market, Gen X and millennials shifting into it, there's a lot more concern about the environment. That's clothes, but food is even a bigger issue. The USDA claims that food waste in the US is a stunning 30 to 40% of our food supply. That's crazy, because wholesome food that's actually still healthy is sent to landfills instead of families in need. And land, water, labor, energy, and other, quote, inputs into creating food are used to produce, transport, prepare, store, and ultimately dispose of this discarded food. This is a big deal. I mean, we can't, it's hard. It's hard to have hunger and waste in the same sentence. So what we want to understand is whether retailers recognize how much consumer attitudes about sustainability have changed. And when push comes to shove, more importantly, talk is cheap, right? So the question is, will shoppers pay more for environmentally friendly merchandise, or is it all just talk? And the way we're going to, we know that to some extent they were paying more for organics, but what about just generally environmentally friendly merchandise? We'll find this out. It'll help us understand what retailers are doing and if these things are the consumer care abouts, or if they're even getting credit for the things that they are doing. I'm really looking forward to this one. The food number was really staggering for me. I knew about the fast fashion issue, but the food one totally staggered me. So back to, I think, Brian, yes?
No, we're coming my way again.
Back to Steve, sorry.
and probably our most clever play on words. We've been doing a store report since we launched this company. And we wanted to do something very different this year. And you'll notice the plethora of all these 360 studies. This isn't just something that we happened upon. We've done, as we've mentioned a few times here, some custom research in the past. And exposing these he said, she said differences has really been kind of eye-opening for us as far as some of the aha things that we would not have thought. And stores are a perfect opportunity for that because, like I said, we've been conducting a store report asking retailers to self-assess for a long time now. And last year, they gave us some really interesting information that maybe they don't know what it's going to take to return stores to relevance again. So making stores great again, zero political overtone. It's really just a great title that we couldn't let slip. Like I said, we've been doing a store report every year. What was interesting that retailers told us in 2019 is they're not necessarily certain what consumers want, and it's affecting them at a macro level. Do they want new stores in new geographies? Do they want new stores in the same geographies? Do they want entirely different formats of stores that exist? And you see a lot of this in the market, people playing around with the concept of store in store. You see pop-ups in places you would not see them from brands that you would not expect. Personally, in my own travels in the last few months, I've seen some really unconventional locations for retail. A lot of times they're co-located with things that you would more associate with entertainment. And all of these things bring about real logistical problems. What kind of technologies are we going to invest in if we don't even necessarily know what the footprint is that's really going to delight consumers? So we'll do what we always do. We're going to survey retailers. But the whole nature of this 360 is we want to get the other side of the conversation. We want to know, we want to give consumers a blank area where they can talk freely about what it is that they like and what they don't like. And from that, we're going to expose some of the breaks. What are the things that are going to help get consumers off the couch, off of shopping online, specifically off of shopping at Amazon, and back out into the world and back out into stores? And one of the things that we didn't highlight here that showed up in last year's store report is the ultimate frustration that retailers are having is we don't know what it is, so all we're doing is just adding more TVs into stores. We just figure a display is the best chance that we've got. And that's not a viable answer for how to really excite and attract consumers as well. They can walk into our store and see more screens. So the end goal of this is going to be very different than any other store report we've done, just by the very nature of the query. We're going to end up with a report that has real takeaways on how store-based retailers can compete in an increasingly online world. And we're jazzed about it because, like I said, we have to do a store report every year, but to have the other side of the equation, we think is going to be invaluable. So we're really looking forward to that. And as usual, that comes out just in the early summer, June timeframe, which is something that we've tried to slate for our store report literally ever since we started. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to talk about analytics.
Yeah, now talk about getting jazzed about something, although I have to say that this is not a 360. This is a classic RSR benchmark report. The reason I'm jazzed about this is because those of you who know me know that I'm a real data geek. Love this stuff. I love this stuff since I was a CIO back in the early 90s, and I haven't changed my enthusiasm, only to get more excited about some of the new things that are happening. But the title of this one is going to be Getting Past the Hype, and what can analytics really accomplish for retailers? When I looked at our files, I noticed that the last time we studied the state of analytics in retail was in 2015. And at that time, retailers rated customer behavior and cross-channel purchase decision analysis as their top priority. But in 2015, the most commonly used reporting tools were the reporting functions built into their operational systems. Think of that. And the most common analytical tool was the good old data warehouse, the data cube that we've been using for some years. But all of that really was before the explosion of non-transactional data. For example, customer digital path to purchase information, geodemographic data, IoT data, all of these things are new. And the other thing that's new, of course, is artificial intelligence. So I said in a blog yesterday when we published that you have to be living under a rock to have avoided all the hype about AI. It seems to be everywhere. But I'm going to quote my partner, Steve Rowan, who said that during our debrief of the last NRF show. Here's his quote: AI seems to be the buzzword of the year. The technology has real applications, but they get lost in the shuffle of future speak. So really the purpose of this study is to highlight what retailers are really doing with the new data and the technology. Let's take a look at some of the details. Next slide, Steve. Some of our studies, I amalgamated this from various of our benchmarks that we've done in 2019, and the research shows that retail winners, and those are the overperformers that we identify in our studies, are really thinking opportunistically about new data and new analytics. Specifically, they're trying to understand how the data will help them to improve their ability to adjust to deviations in sales forecasts, to optimize prices and markdowns, to better incorporate customer segmentation and preferences into the planning process, to have a consistent and detailed demand forecasting platform. And by the way, that's the number one use case that we had seen in 2019 of the new capabilities. To tailor assortments to customer preferences, to integrate planning and cross-functional teams, and to shift to a more holistic pricing, assortment, and promo decision-making process. So these are all very nice goals. They're good goals, and we want to understand how far retailers are really going to achieve those. So in our 2020 benchmark, we'll seek to uncover the true state of these things, especially as it relates to AI-enabled analytics. How are they using new non-transactional data? How are they extrapolating patterns in the data to help them make sense of changes in the operational environment and respond in the most appropriate way? Are they using these new data and new analytics to implement data visualization techniques to democratize complex analyses down to operators? And are they using this new data and capabilities to automate certain decision-making processes? All of these are very interesting to us, and we're really excited to take a look at it because so much has changed since 2015. We're going to launch this survey in May, and we will release the report after summer is over in September 2020. So again, I'm very, very excited about this one. But now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Paula, who's going to talk about another pretty recent topic.
Yeah, we did our first annual cloud report last year, and in a way it was fun. Sometimes it's really fun to be wrong. And we had going in hypotheses around the cloud. that we had going in assumptions that were all completely debunked. We thought the cloud was all about flexing computing power to accommodate peaks in demand. It turns out that had nothing much to do with it. It was all about what we ended up calling pushing the go faster button. And there's no doubt, we saw in subsequent studies as well, that retailers are now completely bought into the cloud. They're bought into the cloud, and there's promises that have been made. We want to check to see if they've been kept, and we also want to check and make sure that expectations are realistic. This survey is going to launch in the summer, and the report's going to release in October, and I'm really excited about it because I'm coming from a whole different place from where we were last year. So let's take a look at some details here. Again, there's no doubt that retailers have bought into the cloud paradigm. It's my opinion that this was a vendor-led initiative, but retailers are now there. So one question we want to ask, because we started sniffing what we call a little bit of magic bullet syndrome in the cloud report, where retailers had some unrealistic expectations that somehow cloud was going to clean all their data, it was going to solve all their legacy system problems. And we want to do a reality check this year and make sure and ask, do retailers understand that cloud can't solve all their legacy problems? Do they understand what it actually is beyond its financial implications? And then there were some other little bits of what I would call damning with faint praise in last year's report. And so we want to get a better sense from retailers. Are vendors keeping their promises? Are they updating the applications frequently enough? Are they communicating what's in those updates effectively and in a timely fashion? And most importantly, because we got a little bit of a disturbing response here, do the cloud-based applications have as robust a functionality as their on-premise based elder brothers? From the 2019 study, the answers just weren't clear enough. So this year, if we start from the understanding that retailers and vendors are moving to cloud, and we understand why retailers are interested, we're going to hone in on the benefits that have been gained and opportunities for improvement. For me, this is actually a very important study because having been wrong the first time, I'm really curious to find out. I'm now very open to find out what's next and what they really think. Back to you.
Yeah, so the Omnichannel Report with a very different bent this year. We started as partners, we started talking back in late July about what it is that we were going to want to study for next year. This is quite a process. If you saw how it happens, there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of conversations that get, kind of spicy. And one of the first things that we did when we got done with it is we showed it to our director of business development, Linda Wolf, and she said, do you have anything that explains how frustrating it is to go shopping right now? And that's when the kernel of the idea for an omnichannel report that became a 360 really was born. We'd done a little bit of evaluative research in years past where we go across the different touch points, digital touch points or channels that retailers offer, and found that there were a lot of breaks. But to formalize it and turn it into a benchmark study is really new for us. So what we want to do with this, and again, this is getting towards the latter part of next year, we'll be launching it after the summer rush and releasing it in November, or I said the summer break and releasing it in November, is what are the things that's going to turn a customer away? And what are the things that are actually going to keep them coming back? We've never really sought to identify those kind of things before. So in the Omnichannel Report, I mean, it's worth calling out. Everyone knows consumers have been calling the shots. They have been for a number of years. But as consumers, all of us get frustrated, particularly as we move across touch points. Whether you're in the store, whether you're shopping on a desktop site, which some of us still do, whether you're on a mobile site or a mobile app, or if you're actually moving into social channels, Instagram and Facebook, are consumers actually getting what they want? And I think if we all ask ourselves that as consumers, the answer comes back a pretty resounding no. But we've been, since 2008, we've been asking retailers to kind of self-assess where they are. And obviously, not to take away from our past reports, because they've been very enlightening in certain areas, but by and large, retailers think they're doing a fine job. Certainly there are exceptions to that rule. But as soon as we kind of test this by asking consumers what they think or comparing against our own anecdotal experiences, that's not really always the case. So we want to produce a document this year that's much more prescriptive on how to fix that. So we're going to ask shoppers, how are retailers holding up their end of the bargain? And when this concept of converged commerce breaks, how much do they care? We've kind of pecked around this a little bit, like I said, in some evaluation research that we've done on a custom basis in recent years, and we were surprised at how much shoppers really do care. But probably the most interesting thing is if they do care, what are they going to do next? So as you might imagine, the goal is not to beat up on anybody. That's never our goal here. Our goal is always to help move the industry forward. So what we're hoping to do with this particular report is to determine what retailers can do right now in order to keep consumers coming back and not turn them away. So a very different angle on a classic topic that we've been studying for a long time. And to that point, when we talk about different angles, we're keeping, as if you've attended this webinar before, if you've looked at our agenda before, you know that we're the first people to say we know there are things we don't know. And it's very difficult to sort of predict a year out what are going to be the most interesting topics or the most buzzworthy topics or the topics that people really want to hear the most about and drill down into from a research point of view. So we try to keep a couple spots open, and next year's no different. We're leaving a survey launch in January open for a report release in April. You might notice that that coincides with conference season quite a bit. There's a reason for that. A lot of times people come to us and say, hey, I have a user group or I have an event that I'm hosting and there's something that I'd really like to find out more about so that I could share those findings at that time. The other one we've tentatively reserved for a survey launch in September and release in December. That, of course, always coincides with NRF for similar reasons. The only problem is we've reserved 2 slots right now. However, both are already in very early stages of being floated with private parties for specific topics. So if there is something that you want to see us cover and it hasn't been covered here today, now is definitely the time to speak up. Just to give you an idea of some of the past topics that have come out of this, we've done benchmark reports around all of these things. Location analytics for a couple of years now, that stemmed out of, or that was born out of a TBD slot that we reserved a couple of years ago. We wouldn't have thought to do that. And so that's where our community and our friends really come into play, because we want to know what you're thinking, because a lot of times you can help us figure out the things that we don't know. And you can see the other topics that have come out of that. We did a store health check that was born out of this. Paula actually referenced earlier the home delivery specific report that we did a few years back. We did a really interesting piece on retail disruptors, which again coincided with one of the big trade shows. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to tell us, hey, you missed something, or there's an angle that you should go a little further with, and we welcome that feedback. Which brings me to one other topic, which is we do custom research, and not sure how much awareness there is in the industry of this. A lot of times these things kind of happen sort of under the radar, but it is actually some of our favorite work. We've done custom research in pretty much every different kind of format that we feel comfortable doing. We don't write white papers. We're very clear about that. We will never do an infomercial. But we do pride ourselves on being really easy to work with, really flexible, and that's part of what differentiates us from some of the larger, more staid companies is we don't have just a product sheet that you can choose from. If you have an idea and there's something you want to do, we're always willing to listen. Some evaluation-based projects, I've referenced these a couple times during this presentation, but in the last few years, we've been doing a really cool study where we actually evaluate, we take a look at 100 different retailers on the IR top 500, usually somewhere between 50 and 150 in the ranking, so we're not going after the really big guys. And we actually go and sit and evaluate their website across different channels, across mobile and the desktop site and the mobile app and all that. We've been doing that for a customer called Yoda, and we really enjoy it. In past years, we've done a thing, some of you might have seen it, it's actually gained a lot of traction for a company called CashStar, where we will actually go and buy 100 different gift cards from 100 different retailers and evaluate that procedure. And actually rank these people, as far as here's who's got the best offering and here's who's got a lot that they can learn. And again, these are not white papers, these are not infomercials, these are truly objective, research projects. We are hired to basically perform the analysis in a truly objective way. We did something a few years back for a company called Reflection, where we looked at the personalization of digital offerings across multiple different, channels or digital touch points, if you will, and found some really surprising results there as well. So you can see here there's a lot of stuff that's kind of off book. If it's something that you think would be a crazy idea and you just don't know, we're always willing to listen. We've done geographical comparisons where we did a really big project a few years ago where we we're contracted by PayPal to look at 8 different geographies and survey consumers to figure out what do you do when stores are, when lines in stores are really long. And that one, you know, it wasn't just surprising, it was surprising by geography. So for example, in Germany, people were much more likely to just sort of take it, whereas in America and Canada, people were much more likely to say, to hell with this, I'm walking out of the store. So interesting things out there that we can't come up with on our own. And one of probably the most interesting things that we do that no one is really, you know, privy to because we keep it so confidential is we do retailer advisories. Everyone's probably familiar with the fact that we do advisories with vendors and help them, you know, sort of align their messaging, make sure that they're making their mistakes in private, make sure that they're speaking a language that retailers can relate to. We do the same thing with retailers. We would never share who we do this with, but it's some of the most rewarding work that we get involved in. And the way that we do it, we don't get into system selection per se, but we will help business and IT align whenever there's a really new idea on the horizon. We work with, you know, making sure that roadmaps are either those that have been established make a lot of sense, or we actually help with developing them as they're in the process. We certainly help retailers identify new systems requirements. And the thing that enables us to do this is we have all of this data, right? We have 12 years where we've been conducting on average between 10 and 12 benchmark reports a year. So we have quite a bit of research to draw upon. And we also have some industry experience that we're not afraid to lean on as well. As I mentioned, all of this is always confidential. So if there's topics that you saw that you want to, you know, that you didn't see that you want to reach out to us about, we're happy to hear that. If there's ideas that you have for custom research, we're obviously very interested in that as well. But as for the actual published agenda, that which we're sharing with the community and that which we're launching today, here it is in one simple screen. And I won't go through and read all these to you, but you can see going from IoT, which is going to launch just next week, all the way through to some of the spots that we've reserved for topics that we, again, could not have thought of on our own. So, Paula, I don't know if we've had any questions come in, if there's any that we want to address on the air, but that does it for the programmed content.
No, there was only one question that came in, and I did answer it.
Oh, cool. All right, so then with that, I want to thank my partners, thank everyone for taking time out of your day to join us. We'll give you a little bit of your day back. We're actually really happy to finally do this for once in less than an hour. We're usually scrambling at the end to try to fit it all in. We had a concerted effort to you know, take account of everyone's time, try to get you out of here a couple minutes early. These slides will be available, as will the full recording. We'll have them out to you by the end of the week. And again, thank you, everyone. We look forward to hearing any feedback that you might have, and have a great rest of your week.